kabacdi markii wartaana loo sameeyay deegaankii annagina faa'iido weyn baan ka helnay dadkii soo diiraad raacay oo dadweynaha ahay oo deegaamada kale ka yimidna maaragtay aad bay ugu noolaadeen biyihina maaragtay aan ugu filnayn oo baraagaha biyana kala gaara yaa ilaahayna siiyey biyihina baahi beelkiina waan baahi beelno hadda waa kuu sheegay dad iyo duunyaba waa la baahi beel waa la oon beel ilaahay baa noogu gargaaray dadkii deegaanka ay soo diiraad raacay meeshaas geela fadhiya hadda jiilaalkii dhawey arki lahayd oo deegaanka aan ahayn oo meel kale ka yimid oo daaqii meesha inta soo galay haddana wartii iyo biyihii iyo wixii iska helay aan lacag ahayn
waxbarashadu waa furaha mustaqbal ifaya hagaajinta kaabayaasha biyaha dartood iskuullada ku yaala Soomaaliya waxay hadda heli doonaan biyo nadiif ah taasoo damaanad qaadaysa in carruurtu ay helaan deegaan caafimaad qaba oo ku habboon waxbarashada tani waxay horseeday inay yaraato tirada carruurta ee xiisadaha ka maqnaada biyuhu muhiim uma ahan oo kaliya kobaca dhaqaalaha balse waxay muhiim u yihiin sidoo kale wadajirka bulshada iyo soo kabashada Soomaaliya waxaa isku imaanaya bulshooyinkaasi ay qaab waara ugu maareeyaan biyaha si loo xaqiijiyo qaybin cadaalad ku salaysan oo waarta warbixinta dhaqaalaha Soomaaliya waxay bidhaaminaysaa ka go'aanshiyaha dawladda Soomaaliya iyo bahwadaagteeda hagaajinta ilaalinta biyaha iyo xoojinta maareynta biyaha iyadoo loo marayo nidaam maalgelineed oo hal abuur leh ayaa waxaa horumar laga sameeyaa xaqiijinta yoolalka horumarka waara ee helitaanka biyaha qaybta 8aad ee warbixinta Bangiga Adduunka ee dhaqaalaha.
This is Gobjok from Mogadishu. Today we bring you the Somali economic update with a special focus on vital resources that drive progress and transforms life. Water. Access to clean water is not just a basic necessity, it's the foundation for sustainable development in Somalia, where water scarcity has been a long-standing issue, coupled with long droughts and flooding with its rains. The government and its partners are working tirelessly to address this challenge and unlock the potential of its people. The Somali economic update highlights the commitment of the government and its partners to invest in water infrastructure, promote water conversions, and strengthen water governance through innovation financing mechanism and partnership. Progress is being made towards achievement the sustainable development goal of universal access to clean water and sanitation. The World Bank's 8th edition of Somali Economic Update examines recent economic developments and growth prospects, while also exploring the integration of climate change into Somalia's growth agenda. So we will have discussions about the World Economic Update in Somalia, and then you will listen points from the Somali authorities and World Bank officials. So we going to hand over to the World Bank team in line.
Today. Over the next 2 hours or so, we will be exploring Somalia's economic performance and outlook since 2023. We are joined by His Excellency Honorable Bihi Iman Ege, Minister of Finance, Honorable Dhaqaalaha, Minister of Energy and Water Resources, as well as Christina Svensson, the World Bank Somalia Country Manager, and many other dignitaries. Over the next distinguished guests, we will be exploring Somalia's economic performance and outlook since 2023. Welcome to the live virtual launch of the 8th Somalia Economic Update on WebEx webinar and via YouTube. The Somalia Economic Update is an annual flagship publication of the World Bank. It explores Somalia's economic performance and offers policy options. For those watching via WebEx, please use the chat function to post your questions. Please keep it concise. You can also comment or post your questions on our Twitter handle at MPF1Somalia with hashtag Somalia Economic Update and on the YouTube chat. For all our guests, please mute your microphone until it's your turn to speak. This year's launch coincides with Somalia facing recurring climate-related challenges, including droughts, floods, and conflict. Ongoing flash floods have caused widespread devastation, impacting millions of Somali people. The latest Somali economic update examines economic developments and growth prospects, emphasizing the integration of climate change considerations. Efficient use of water resources, both blue and green, is vital for economic success and resilience. Somalia has opportunities for positive change, including improved coordination, optimized water management, embracing a circular economy, and establishing strong governance systems. Let me leave the details to the main speakers. Now, please join me in welcoming the World Bank Country Manager for Somalia, Ms. Christina Svensson, to make her opening remarks and to contextualize our discussions here today. Christina, please over to you, and then welcome the honorable ministers after you. Thank you.
A very good morning to all of you from Nairobi. I'm doing this launch today with some mixed emotions, and I'll explain a little bit more in detail later in my speech. First of all, I'm really happy that we can share the findings of the 8th edition of the Somalia Economic Update. As in the previous editions, the Somalia Economic Update discusses recent macroeconomic developments and medium-term outlook in Somalia. In each edition, we also have a special topic, and this year it couldn't be more timely. The topic for today is water management, critical for ensuring resilient and sustainable growth, and again very much linked to the current flooding and obviously to climate change. I'm also happy to see the government presence, and I would like to take this opportunity to thank the Honorable Minister of Finance and the Honorable Minister of Energy and Water Resources, who will deliver keynote speeches and participate in the discussion in today's session. Thank you also to all the other participants that are participating today, senior government officials, development partners, private sector representatives, academia, and last but not least, the Somali public who are watching this event via various platforms. Welcome, and I look forward to an engaging discussion. Now a note of why my emotions are mixed. The main author of this report was our dear colleague, John Randa, who passed away a month and a half ago. And again, John has been serving as a senior economist for Somalia since 2015 and had just completed the report at the time of his passing. He also led the trade analytics and advisory as well as statistics work in Somalia, working closely with government agencies, both at the federal and the FMS level. John will be remembered for his kindness, his humanity, his generosity, and great sense of humor, filled with his hearty laughter that warmed everyone around him. He is dearly missed, and he will be dearly missed going forward. Let me now, in a nutshell, give you a sense of what the report is about and how this work fits into the World Bank's program for Somalia. Somalia had a very difficult period over the last few years with the recurrent climate-related shocks, the drought, the floods, the locust infestation, higher international commodity prices, and increased insecurity and conflict. Currently, we are informed by the Somalia Disaster Management Agency that the ongoing flash floods have brought great devastation to Somalia, claiming hundreds of lives and affecting over 2 million people. I was also in Mogadishu yesterday and saw the devastation in person in parts of the city. Despite these shocks, the economy has continued to grow since 2021, although at modest rates. Moreover, the medium-term outlook remains positive, with both GDP and GDP per capita growth rates improving further. The difficulties posed by the shocks didn't deter the federal government of Somalia to continue with important reforms. reforms that now are about to bring about a major milestone in Somalia's economic reform journey, the HIPC completion point, which will mean that Somalia will reduce its debt both to bilateral and multilateral agencies, going from close to 70% of GDP before HIPC initiative to less than 5% of GDP after HIPC. These reforms also supported the implementation of the IMF program. And finally, also, I would like to congratulate the government for joining the East Africa Community Bloc, which is again a testament to the reforms and the ambition that the Somalia government has set. I also had the pleasure to participate in the discussions around Vision 2060, a forward-looking exercise of what Somalia will look like in 2060 over the last few days. And again, I encourage the participant there to continue the ambitions that have been set so far since the HIPC engagement started. Again, these are significant achievements for which the Somalia government should take credit. The World Bank has been supporting the authorities in their response to the recurrent shocks and throughout the HIPC process. Since 2020, when the HIPC decision point was reached, the IDA portfolio has grown significantly with grant financing, supporting state building, investment in social services, investment in resilience and growth, in human capital, and again, reforms to achieve the HIPC completion point triggers. And now the big question is what happens after HIPC, right? The post-HIPC agenda, what should be the focus of the reform agenda, and how can we continue to support you to be as ambitious as you have been so far? Again, it's expected that the government will continue to strengthen domestic revenues, to be able to invest more in human development and in infrastructure to support inclusive and resilient growth. On the structural front, and again, turning to the topic of this year's Somalia Economic Update on water, again, the reforms are important, and again, the priority needs to be centered around a robust, inclusive, and transparent system for governance of water to ensure the resilience of farms and households against various climate shocks and support economic growth going forward. I thank you again for this opportunity, and again, I look forward to the discussion, and I call upon the Honorable Minister of Finance, Bihi Ige, for his keynote speech. Many thanks, and over to you, Minister.
Thank you, Christina. Good morning to everyone. Could you hear me, please?
We hear you. Yeah.
Yes, good morning to you all. It is a great honor and pleasure to be delivering the opening remarks for the launch of the World Bank's 8th edition of the Somali Economic Update today. Indeed, this edition comes important for many reasons. Firstly, it's dedicated to our good colleague, the late John Renda, as Christina has mentioned, the senior economist for our country who has the lead author and managed to finalize the report before he passed away. We recognize his hard work and efforts over the many years he has worked. He worked with Somalia and prayed for his family and loved ones. Secondly, this report comes on the cusp of Somalia reaching the HIPC completion point in the middle of next month after a strong track record of reform delivery in partnership with all our valuable international partners, notably the World Bank. This is both historic and a renewed opportunity to ensure we continue to deepen our reforms and policy impacts so that we can address some of the key challenges today to escape extreme poverty tomorrow. Thirdly, the focus of the report is on integrating climate change with Somalia's national development with a focus on water. Climate change is an existential threat, global threat, for which Somalia is on the front lines, with enormous adaptation and mitigation requirements. Water is the source of all life and basis for our livelihoods and survival, so both are intertwined and must be combined for the purpose of Somalia's national economic and development planning. In this regard, I recognize the presence of my ministerial colleague, His Excellency Chama Takal Abbas, the Minister of Energy and Water Resources of Somalia, who is working tirelessly with his team to deliver on the promise of our national water resource strategy and policy. And I am confident his statement following mine will provide the necessary details on where we are with this policy. While I look forward to the presentation of the bank's economic outlook for 2023, I want to make clear our government's absolute commitment to further deepening our reforms, rising domestic revenue, growing economy, and improving social protection. We are also determined to ensure the full utilization of available grant resources from the bank and the bilateral and multilateral partners to ensure we deliver on our policy priorities, which includes fully covering our national recurrent costs, financing basic public services like security, education, water, health, as well as responding to the devastating impact of climate change. In this regard, I am pleased with the progress our government has made with the bank on the country partnership framework for the next 5 years, and the focus on a resilient post-HIBIC future given Somalia's exceptional fragility. This is fundamental for our post-HIBIC macroeconomic stability and creating the opportunities that spur the people-centered sustainable development we aspire to in our national development plan. Integrating climate change with Somalia's national development with a focus on water and its management is a policy and budgeting priority for our government. Climate is already a cross-cutting priority, but the interconnection with water is crucial. For our competitive productive sectors, which include agriculture, livestock, and the blue economy, to address our internal food security issues, as well as creating new opportunities for regional and international export, especially now that we have joined the East African community. We need to manage our water resources better. Doing this could also help to strengthen the weaker national and regional economic growth we have been experiencing in the last few years. The fact is that we are consistently in a state of cyclical and recurrent climatic shocks, which have manifested in 4 failed rainy seasons, droughts, and a sudden attack on livelihoods and infrastructure by the current El Niño floods, which continue to cause great damage today. This is unacceptable as it is painful. In addition, while we have been trying to improve social protection and build a resilience for the most vulnerable in Somalia with the bank's support through groundwater projects and similar projects like Bahnano program, this still remains weak. Furthermore, the future look is a bit difficult with remittance flows being sluggish and the major employment creating sectors like agriculture heavily affected by the impact of climate change. The most sustainable solution to addressing this is raising the domestic revenue and having a better access to global climate financing facilities and instruments which are extremely difficult to reach, let alone access, especially for fragile states with weaker debt carrying capacities like Somalia. On the matter of rising domestic revenue, I'm glad to state that in the last 4 months, we have managed to increase it by 25% through improved operations, tax exemption oversight, and sustained engagement with the private sector and major taxpayers, including the telecom companies. Going forward, we seek to build on this with automation, better customs administration, further public awareness raising, and legal enforcement of tax evasion. Additionally, we are also managing expenditure in a way that focuses on essential services to the public and creating opportunities and economic growth. Despite our mentioned national reform efforts in Somalia, we must always make a very difficult trade-off with our meager domestic resources. Do we address the structural global issues like climate change, which is hurting our people directly, despite contributing among the least to its causation? Or do we focus on financing the priorities that create human capital, infrastructure, and improve the investment environment? I am sure you will agree that this is a very tough choices for Somalia at this challenging time of global economic slowdown. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, in conclusion, I thank the bank team for this year's economic outlook report, and I look forward to the presentation and productive discussions on it. I thank you all for your attention. Over to you, Christina.
Thank you, Minister. Over to the Honorable Minister of Energy and Water Resources, please. I think you're on mute, Minister.
I think it isn't today. It is.
Sorry. Thank you, Christina. I think you heard me now. Hello? You heard me now, Christina?
Yes, we can hear you. Can you proceed? Just confirm in the room.
Oh, okay.
No, I cannot hear.
Okay, Honorable. Okay, thanks. Good morning, everyone. I am very blessed and honorable to be to join you all for the launching of the 8th edition of the World Bank's Somalia Economic Update, Somalia's development, the case for water. On behalf of the Ministry of Energy and Water Resources, I welcome all our guests and underline how much the government appreciates the support provided by the World Bank. Water is life. Without water, life cannot be sustained. It is truly unique resource, providing the base not only for food production and health lives, but also for economic growth, social well-being, state building, and democracy. In Somalia today, we see the revenging effects of water and sufficient difficult times for our country, and people suffer. Underlying the absolute necessity of addressing the humanitarian needs, I also want to point out that reactive and emergency programs will not resolve the fundamental challenges that we face. Ministry of Energy and Water Resources is committed to also ensure long-term solutions to address the central challenge that our country faces in relation to water, making the best possible use of available resources, balancing demand and supply, sharing water equitability, and delivering well-being. Somalia faces growing needs for improved water services in both rural and urban areas, and to manage much needed investments in water infrastructure, while dealing with the challenge posed by climate change and rapid population growth. In this context, I am pleased to see how the recently complete National Water Resource Strategy is delivering as intended, and how it has contributed to the establishment of the Water Coordination Facility. Water Sector Coordination Facility provides a unique opportunity for enhancing cooperation, information sharing, and the coordination between government authorities and development partners. The facility supports the sector-wide agenda for water development in Somalia and of the water programs. The facility will also national at oversight, producing evidence for water sector development and future grading. Ladies and gentlemen, in the light of these challenges and opportunities, the focus of the report being presented today's meeting is very timely and highly relevant. The present edition of Somalia, how water and what they look like. In our development world, we have to learn from the past and the present in order to plan better for the future. The report highlights the importance of establishing new ways of working and addressing water scarcity across the country. This gives credit the governmental focus on sustainable water resource management and climate-sensitive water infrastructure, as well as long-term sustainable financing plan for sector development. However, this Somalia economic update tells us something very fundamental. Water is not a sector issue to be discussed by a few experts. It poses questions of fundamental importance for the whole economy of Somalia. Ladies and gentlemen, water is alive in our society, and we recognize its value to national unity and well-being. Let us turn the way we manage our water from sector concern into the driver for change and sustainable growth. I would like to end this brief statement by reiterating that in spite of aridity and water scarcity, Somalia's economy is a water economy. The Minister of Energy and Water Resources remains committed to continue excellent cooperation with World Bank and to furthering substantive investment in programs supporting water resource development. Thank you for your opportunity to address you today, and I look forward to insightful presentation and discussion. Thank you so much. Christine.
Thank you, Honorable Ministers, for your thought-provoking speeches. Certainly, Somalia is a country with a lot of opportunities that can be harnessed to get onto a path of growth and development that will alleviate the challenges of its citizens. We now invite presentations by the World Bank from Stella Ilieva, our senior economist, who will present the economic update, and Chantal Rishi, senior water supply and sanitation specialist, who will talk to us about the water sector. Welcome, Stella.
Thank you, Fatuma. Good morning, and thank you very much, Honorable Ministers Vicky, Egi, and Jama Dakal for participating in this event and for your inspiring remarks. I joined the Somalia team recently, and I'm really honored to present the findings of the Somalia economic update. As mentioned by Christina, one of the key, the lead authors of this report was the late John Randa, who we all miss very much. My presentation will focus on three main topics. First, I will touch on recent economic developments covering 2022 and 2023. Then I will present how we in the World Bank see the medium economic outlook in Somalia. And finally, I will discuss the key macroeconomic policy options that the government may want to consider in the medium term. Let me start with the recent economic picture. Somalia is coming out of a very difficult period. This period was marked by multiple recurrent shocks, as well as new global shocks that have devastating impacts on economies around the world. In Somalia, we had 5 consecutive seasons of drought, as well as locust infestation that affected the key sources of growth in the country. On top of that, we had the global pandemic, COVID-19 pandemic, that had significant negative impacts on the livelihoods of Somali people. All these shocks increased the economic vulnerability and interrupted Somalia's growth momentum. These shocks were compounded by sharp rise in global prices and impacted the poor the most. In fact, the price surge affected more than half of the households in Somalia, while drought or severe water shortage affected predominantly nomadic and rural households. The Somali Integrated Household Budget Survey shows that 87% of nomadic households were impacted by the drought, and every second household had suffered death of livestock. As a result of these shocks, poverty among nomadic and rural households was the highest, with 78% of nomadic population and 65% of rural population poor. Many Somalis were displaced and moved to urban areas, requiring increased humanitarian assistance to avert the crisis. Despite all these challenges, the federal government of Somalia continued to advance economic reforms. What are these reforms? These are economic governance and social reforms as part of the HIPC completion point. These are policies implemented as part of the IDA development policy financing and IMF program. These reforms and improved weather conditions are supporting continued economic recovery. As a result, we expect GDP growth to accelerate this year to 3.1% from 2.4% in 2022. I should note here that this presentation includes the latest official GDP estimates and our latest projections. And as we see from this graph, overall, after the dip in 2020 and on the back of multiple challenges, including security challenges, the economy remained quite resilient. And since 2021, the economy has been growing at higher speed than the 5-year average. The improved growth outcomes, although still modest, were associated with significant slowdown of inflation. Since mid-2022, especially of food inflation. What does it mean? This means improvements in household consumption as food prices dominate the consumer basket. This means also less food insecurity. These improvements, however, were muted because of the significant divergence of prices across the country, and fuel prices are still quite high. Inflation in Mogadishu and Somaliland remains sticky, while Puntland experienced sharp fall in overall and food inflation. The Central Bank of Somalia continued to strengthen the stability of the financial sector. The central bank improved the regulatory framework for the financial sector, allowed access of two international banks on the Somali market, adopted eeBaanka, the international bank account number, and made steps to strengthen anti-money laundering. These efforts have boosted confidence in the financial sector, and bank deposits currently are almost triple their levels in 2018. Credit to the private sector also increased, especially to construction and real estate, but remained well below the needs of the economy. Overall, financial intermediation remains low in the country, both for businesses and for households. Only 8.3% of households in the country have access to own bank account, and access to credit is even more limited for households. The multiple shocks that affected Somalia's economy were very pronounced in the external trade. Somalia's exports are dominated by livestock, whose numbers are very sensitive to increased frequency of droughts and affect overall export earnings. In addition, although a small share of exports, but crop and vegetable oil exports were also affected by the drought. The drought and global price dynamics, however, had a significant impact on the imports. Somalia's import bill increased sharply in 2022, with food imports up by 66%, construction materials by 57%, and oil and medical products more than doubled compared to 2021. The widening external trade balance in 2022 was financed by remittances and external grants, with the latter growing significantly. Despite very difficult economic environment, revenues of the federal government of Somalia improved. As a result of tax policy and administration changes, domestic revenues increased from 2.3% GDP in 2021 to 2.5% in 2022. And as the minister mentioned, but also the data we've seen, there are indications of further improvements of domestic revenues in 2023. Domestic revenues include tax and non-tax revenue, with tax revenue improving at faster speed in 2023 compared to last year. However, domestic revenue is hardly sufficient to finance the wage bill, and the development needs of the country are enormous. The fastest growing portion of the FGS revenue was the external grants, mainly from the World Bank and the European Union. These grants eased liquidity pressures and enabled the budget to close with a small fiscal deficit of 0.1% of GDP. Higher revenues made possible increased financing of social assistance and higher transfers to federal member states. FGS spending, the federal government spending, is dominated by administration and security. However, we see continued improvement of the structure of spending since 2019. And especially in 2022, if you look at the green bar, this shows the spending on basic public services, which include social assistance, education, and health. And this has increased tremendously. Social assistance expenditures, the Bahnano program managed by the FGS, account for the highest share, 27% of total spending, followed by education, spending, and health. Spending on the economic sector also increased by almost 2/3 to account for 7.8% of total spending during this period. And project grants have boosted investments in road infrastructure, urban development, and water services. External grants also supported building capacity at FMS level, outstripping domestic revenue generated by the FMS. What is notable, however, is that the federal member states also collected more revenues in 2022 compared to 2021. And now let me move to the next item of my presentation, the medium-term outlook. The good news is that the future looks brighter, as the gains of economic reforms are likely to increase. Soon, Somalia will achieve an important milestone of its development, with the HIPC completion point expected in the coming weeks. This means that the country has implemented the completion point triggers and has followed sound macroeconomic policy framework. After the completion point, Somalia will receive debt relief from multilateral and bilateral partners, and will see a sharp reduction of its external debt. Will also have access to concessional financing. In addition, the country has just reached another important milestone by joining the East African Community, which will improve trade integration in the future. So our latest projections show that we expect economic growth to pick up in the medium term, from estimated 3.1% in 2023 to 3.8% by 2025. And as the impacts of the drought wane, we expect agriculture and export performance to improve. And easing of global prices will support improvements in private consumption, the main driver of growth in the country. The risks to the outlook, however, are significant. Some of these risks relate to the impacts of climate shocks, which are difficult to predict, such as droughts and floods. Uncertainty is also high for domestic security as well as for global economic shocks. So what are the elements of the post-HIPC economic policy agenda? Building on the achievements of the HIPC completion point, Somalia will need to ensure economic resilience and growth. The reform agenda going forward is broad, but I would like to focus on macroeconomic priorities, especially four key priorities. First and foremost, what is needed, and it was also mentioned by the minister, is to expedite measures to raise revenues so that the federal government can afford to provide more and better services to its citizens. This means finding new ways to mobilize inland resources, improving compliance, and harmonizing further tax and customs regimes across the country. Second, while spending is insufficient to cover development needs, measures to control spending and to ensure its efficiently used are critical. For example, spending prudently on the wage bill and ensuring check and balances of security spending. The last two measures in my list are aimed at strengthening the financial sector, supporting its crucial intermediary role for economic growth, and also having the systems in place to allow for faster trade and financial integration. Thank you very much for your attention. And now I turn to my colleague Chantal Ritchie, who will discuss the challenges and opportunities for water management in boosting economic resilience and growth. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Stella, and good morning, Minister Biga and Minister Jama. Thank you very much for joining this morning, and good morning also to the viewers that are out there. Salam alaikum. I also would like to recognize John Randa. John and I had worked together for 10 years, and I think the most vigorous time of our interaction over the past 10 years was this year as we prepared the Somali economic update together. First of all, it was the negotiations to get water as the special focus, and then it was the continued support that John provided during. And I kind of wish that John was here with us today. I'm very happy to be able to talk about water from an economic perspective as well. Maybe not as economisty as Stella's just presented. It's probably going to be a bit more technical and a bit more people-orientated. But there's 4 points which our presentation this morning is going to sort of focus around. The first point is that Somalia's water and the economy are closely linked. They flow and dry up together. And this is why we are talking about water in the Somalia economic update. The second point is that Somalia is a water-scarce country, but there's a fact that isn't often spoken about, and that's that there is actually enough water in Somalia to meet your socio-economic goals. However, and this is a big however, if the water is managed very carefully, and we're going to talk more about that going forward. The third point is that most of the water in Somalia is used for food. This may sound a bit strange, but we'll describe again later in the presentation how food absorbs most of the water. And this means that it's particularly important to manage the agricultural and livestock sectors in a water smart way. And then fourthly, we're also going to talk about some additional ways that Somalia can manage its water more effectively. And this is about governance, integrated approaches, collaboration, and intergovernmental cooperation. But before we get into the sort of discussion points, I thought it would be useful to just set a bit of scene and put out a few points about Somalia. We all know these factors, but Somalia the climate is hot, it's dry, and the weather is very, very variable. The average rainfall in Somalia is about 250 millimeters per year. It's very, very low. And just to bring a comparison so that it perhaps makes a bit more sense, Kenya, the country right next door, Somalia, the average rainfall is 680 millimeters per year, so just under 700 millimeters. So that shows you that the rainfall that Somalia receives is very low. There's 2 perennial rivers, the Juba and Shabelle. Both these rivers start in upstream countries. That means that upstream cooperation, transboundary cooperation is very important. The atmosphere is very hot and very dry, and there's a lot of wind. What this means is that the water that's in dams, in rivers, and on land surfaces, it's very quickly lost to evaporation. So it lands and it disappears. Climate change is just having a devastating impact. You know, I've worked on Somalia for a decade, and when we first started working and talking about water, there was a drought every second year. I'm not even sure if there were many floods in the first sort of years that we were working on Somalia. And now it's just cyclical. You have a drought, and then there's a flood, and then there's another drought, and then there's another flood, and then you have locusts and cyclones. So the climate change points are very, very real, and water is at the heart of that. And then finally, and this is more of the economic nature is that the physical scarcity of water is worsened by economic scarcity. And Minister Egi, this is why we're always asking for more investment into the water sector. This is essential for water resource management and service delivery. So I want to focus a bit on the kind of more technical issues of water per capita. The graph on the left is showing a period of 100 years, from 1960 to 2020, and it's showing how the population is growing. So there's a very steep incline of population growth. On the right-hand side, that graph is showing how much water is available per person. So essentially what is happening is that as the population grows higher and higher, so the amount of water per person is reducing. And this is a very important point for Somalia's economic development. If we have a look at the per capita consumption of water in comparison to other countries, then Somalia is very low. All those little dots on the right-hand side are countries around the world. And just to bring in some comparisons here, Somalia's average per capita water is 1,800 liters per person per day. Kenya, your neighbor, is 3,000 liters per day, and Turkey, 4,000 liters per day. We chose Kenya and Turkey to show an analysis because Kenya is your neighbor, because Turkey is a place where many Somalis go, so you know what the standard of living is like there. The standard of living and water consumption are very closely related, and Somalia actually has one of the lowest rates of water use per person globally, and this directly links into what the standard of living is like for Somalia. So that average consumption of 1,800 liters per person today is very low, and even as it's very low, it's very unequally distributed across the country, and this reflects in food insecurity and the vulnerability to floods. And then the last point on this is that more food and meat in the diet means a higher standard of living, but also it means you need a larger water consumption. So the next few slides, I'm going to take you through some scenarios which focus more on food and the relationship between water and food and standard of living. So if we look at the amount of water that's available per person per day in Somalia, it's that 1,800 liters. Of that 1,800 liters, only 100 is used for general day-to-day purposes, washing, drinking, production of goods, services. The other 1,700 liters is used in food production. And when we start looking at food production and we look at agriculture, there's three key agricultural water management challenges. First of all, your Juba and Shabelle basins. Given climate change and given the potential for upstream development, can you rely on large-scale irrigated agriculture? That's a question that's important for the sector to ask itself, and this has to be done in collaboration and coordination with the agriculture and livestock sector. Then we look at rain-fed agriculture, which we're seeing very positive results in, and the report is focusing quite a bit on rain-fed agriculture. Most of the rainfall that lands in Somalia returns to the atmosphere without being used. So essentially it evaporates. Improved land management and agricultural practices can increase the proportion of rain that can be used for future food production. So hold on to the rain, don't let it get lost. And then the third point is food imports. From a water perspective, it makes sense to import water-intensive food. Every time you eat out in Somalia, every family that you have dinner with is a big bowl of rice. That is a very water-intensive crop. So on average, food imports are costing Somalia around 2.8 billion USD. To increase food self-sufficiency without further stressing water is an important policy issue for government. I've got a few graphs, a few slides now that will just set out the sort of trajectory that Somalia is on from a water perspective. And the purpose of this is to demonstrate how important it is to manage the water that you have in a very, very efficient way. If we look back over the last 60 years, there's a very clear decline in the amount of water available per person. And this directly relates to the amount of food available. And this is caused by an underinvestment in water infrastructure and services, stagnating domestic food production, and this rapid population increase. And this is a very clear downward trajectory you see on the graph. So from 1970 to 2020, over the past 50 years, the water availability has dropped from 3,500 liters per person per day down to 1,800 liters per day. If this scenario continues, there's going to be a problem, and it's going to be a disaster for the country. So if this business as usual scenario continues, you're going to see that food imports and domestic production rise. There's the continued population increase. There's going to be potential severe food insecurity, even potential famines. And you're looking at an estimated availability of water of just 1,000 liters per person per day. So if you think of the example of Turkey of 4,000 liters per day, Kenya of 3,000 liters per day, imagine what it's going to be like if you've only got 1,000 liters of water a day per person in the next 40 years. The next slide that I'm going to show starts taking us towards a bit of a better future. So this is managing water in a better way, being conscious of population growth, and managing your food and agricultural sector. So with better management of water, you'll see an increase in domestic food production and food imports, be more money. The population growth is better managed, improved conditions, but some hunger, and that relates to the unequal distribution of water. And then in 2060 and then 40 years, you've moved to what we call an improved situation, an improved scenario, and that's at a water availability of 2,700 liters per day. And the final graph that we want to talk about here is the aspirational scenario. It's a new well-being, extensive food imports and domestic production, population increase is much lower than forecasted. The conditions are similar to the Turkey of today, widespread well-being, and that's an endpoint of having water availability of 3,800 liters per day, which is doable if the water is managed. And those graphs on the side, the purple dotted line is the sort of the middle scenario towards food insecurity, and the green line is the aspirational scenario, which you should be aiming for. So how do we get there? This is a bit technical, but it's always nice to have some photographs in a presentation. So Somalia has got two kinds of water. We talk about blue water and green water. Blue water is the water that's in rivers, it's in groundwater. Everyone is familiar with blue water. You've used it in your taps, you've seen it you've used it in hand pumps, boreholes. It's water which is readily known. The other water is green water. And I think that you'll find quite a lot in Somalia now. I know that the President's office is talking about it, the greening of Somalia. It's a term that's more and more widespread, and we talk about the great green walls of Somalia. So green water is water which is in soil and it's in plants. It directly supports critical ecosystems, and it's used in rain-fed agriculture and in rangelands and for fodder for livestock. So just some information about green water and how it can deliver more food. In environments which are arid and hot like Somalia, the atmosphere is very thirsty, the rain falls and it evaporates. And if it's held in these open surface water storage options, it can evaporate at up to 2.5 meters per year, which is enormous loss of water. So if you can start through the different water management processes in Somalia of holding onto that rainwater, protecting it, keeping it in the soil, keeping it underground, under shade, you're already on a good, all these little buckets that you see everywhere with that little roof over it, that's already a very good step in the right direction, or keeping it in a tank. I want to present a few very visual examples of what can happen if you manage green water and if you hold onto the green water. From West Africa, Niger, across to here, Somalia, Rabadli and Puntland, and then from Rajasthan in India, there's some very powerful examples of how managing green water can basically transform the landscape from dry and arid to green and vibrant. And all of these photos are before and after photos. So how do you think these transformations happened? Was there significant rainfall increases? No, there weren't. Were there new big dams? No, there were no new big dams. Were there big irrigation schemes being built or old ones rehabilitated? I can imagine the Ministry of Water guys are smiling now because they know that there's always this topic about whether to irrigate the existing infrastructure. Were huge canals and pipelines built to bring water into these areas? No, none of that was done. Basically, what happened is that this greening process has been done through smart land and rainfall management. So firstly, keep the soil moist. So instead of that water getting lost to the Indian Ocean or the Red Sea in the north, running down all of the wadis, hang onto that water, hang onto it into the rangelands, open the soil. So use technologies that open the soil and enable the water to get in and stay in. And once the water is inside the soil, it won't evaporate. So it increases plant growth. The second thing is catching that rainfall runoff. All of the wadis, where the water runs away, just do small infrastructures, sand dams, soil bunds, subsurface dams, half moon bunds. There's a plethora of small infrastructure technology that can be used. And Minister, it doesn't cost a lot of money it's an average sand dam is costing you about $150,000, soil bunds, $2,000. So you can do a lot with a little. The third point, which is important to highlight here, is that this productive use of the green water, it really empowers communities to benefit from the water. So they don't have to wait for someone to come and dig a borehole. They've got availability right there and then from these small infrastructures and harnessing this green water. So just to draw us towards conclusion, and we've suggested in the report some very clear entry points for the water sector. And then, of course, we're also bringing in some suggestions in the form of a bit of advocacy and an agenda for change. But we've got these 7 different entry points that we're positing in the report, and we talk about this a lot with the Ministry of Energy and Water Resources. Number 1, catch the rain and promote rain-fed agriculture. You don't have to rely on very expensive technologies to be able to be more food secure. Boost funding and import more food. Bridge these conflicts and divisions around available water. Let people talk to each other. Let the head tulos, the care processes enable this dialogue. Recognize the value of innovation, reuse, ecosystem services. We should be moving in Somalia towards a place where you're reusing your water over and over. If you think of a country like Namibia, and the capital of Namibia is Windhoek, they reuse 99% of their water. Developing the groundwater and supporting wash services. The Ministry of Energy and Water Resources is making great strides in the project, the groundwater project. The Barwako project is doing good things in terms of impact around the rain and the rain-fed agriculture. Slowing the population growth and enabling that small amount of water that's available to be more available if there's less people. And then the last entry point that we want to highlight is the reforms in the water sector. The Ministry of Energy and Water Resources has made great strides in the last 4 to 5 years. The National Water Resources Strategy was published. The roadmap that guides the implementation of that strategy is being followed. The ministry, I mean, it's just been quite incredible to watch the journey of the ministry in the past 2 years of really stepping into the sectoral leadership role. The establishment of the water sector governance facility, it's very much still in its nascent phase, but it's getting going. So we're seeing the formalized processes coming there. What's needed now is the investment for the Ministry of Energy and Water Resources to actually have implementation projects to manage. Finally, then, we want to talk about this agenda for change, these 6 opportunities which are related to water. Firstly, recognize the value of both green water and blue water as key economic assets. Don't only think about the blue water, the Chevalier and the Juba. Recognize that green water can be transformative. The second is have a good look at the animal and meat processing sector. Currently, what's happening is most of the livestock that's being exported is being exported alive. related to the Hajj, going off to Mecca, but actually all of those animals that have been sent out of Somalia, they're taking your water out of the country. So the quality of the meat in Somalia is amazing, and there's a lot of opportunity to convert that into a really good, healthy animal meat processing center, good abattoirs, which are HACCP compliant, where you can export your meat in boxes instead of only alive. Initiate these whole of society dialogue around water, get everyone talking about water so people understand how it needs to be managed now to prevent long-term problems. The fourth agenda for change is accepting new norms, conditions, and practice. The way of doing things always is not going to work. If you exclude women in villages from having discussions about water and how it's being used, it's not going to last. If you marginalize different groups, the water's not going to be used. If you perpetuate wanting to drill a borehole in an area where you know that the water is very deep, where you could actually do something cheaper and hold green water. So start getting society to move away from the normal ways of thinking about things. Establish this robust, inclusive, transparent system of governance, link with the media. This is a good start, the publication and launching of this economics report. And then finally, and this is a bit longer term, is moving towards this circular economy, which is more ecosystem based and more research based. So the future could be dismal or it could be very positive. It's up to you, ministers. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Stella and Chantal. Honorable Minister Bihi Ige, we would now like to welcome you to give your feedback on the presentations that have been made. We understand Honorable Jama has left, but we hope that you can at least give us some feedback.
All right, thank you, Faduma. And thank you for the comprehensive and very insightful presentation of the report. The report actually provides a comprehensive overview on the state of economic affairs of Somalia, providing excellent, linkage with water and its management. So it is timely, as I said in my remarks, and it's also very important theme to reflect and to discuss this year. I concur with the report that Somalia has made a huge progress in terms of its reforms, that we have made a huge progress in terms of economic reforms and enhancing institutional performance. And this provides a critical foundation for water governance and management, to be specific. So that linkage is actually very illuminating and very interesting to be reflected. What also is very crucial is that water is not only, that the report highlights, water is not only a basic necessity for life, but it also a critical developmental factor for all countries, and particularly for Somalia. It is nearly linked with all sustainable development goals. Water is actually linked with all. It's critical for the, realization of all sustainable development goals, and as such, we need to be mindful of that and make sure that it's better managed and its governance also improved. What is also very interesting in the report is that it provides a clear entry points for us to look into it in order to actually in optimizing and enhancing its in water utilization and governance. It also provides an agenda for change for us to better utilize the resources, the water as a critical resource or an asset in Somalia. One of these is, having adopting a societal approach in managing water. I think this is a crucial factor because water has been a source of conflict over the years because they were very scarce. So it is absolutely also very crucial to find ways to actually mobilize communities to discuss and to have societal, norms and ways of actually managing and or utilizing resources and also managing water-related conflicts. That's also very a critical point in the report, and I agree to that as well. As you know, we are between. Just last year we have been. People have been dying lack of water, and now people are actually almost drowning. And this is the reality that we are actually facing in Somalia due to the climate crisis. It's actually a pertinent issue that we need to find ways to manage our water crisis, both in its abundance or in its scarcity. And as you know, access to climate finance, and this is, I have actually a point that I have reiterated in many discussions. It has actually proved cumbersome for countries like us. So provision of technical assistance for us to be able to access these resources is also very crucial. And I know there are renewed momentum and commitment in this regard from both the bank and from all multilateral donors. And this is a welcome gesture from us. Recently, I have attended a UK-hosted event on Food Summit, which speaks to the heart of the issues that we are actually discussing today. So I recognize that there is a huge momentum globally. Particularly, the bank has actually re-energized its, instruments to make sure that that climate crisis need to be addressed, and it should be treated as a global goods. So by leveraging these, commitments and renewed, emphasis from the donors, I think we need to find ways also to make use of these available resources. And as I said, your continued partnership in terms of provision of capacity building support with the Ministry of Water as well as other relevant institutions will be very critical. So I will stop here, but I would also like to hear from the rest of the team to reflect on the report. And if there are any other issues, I will come back. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister. We have quite a few questions from people in Somalia. And I will ask you in Somali, and you can answer in Somali, I think, because it is really for their, benefit. So, Wardi Abdulle, waxay weydiinaysaa, waxaan rabaa in aan su'aal weydiiyo wasiirka maaliyadda. Haddii dowladda laga caafiyo deynta shacabka Soomaaliya, maxaa faa'iido ah oo ay helayaan?
Wardi waa mahadsan yahay. Su'aashani runtii su'aal muhiim weeye. Marar badan aan ka hadlay, siyaabo kala duwan aan uga hadlay. Dayn cafisku runtii wuxuu ahaa geedi muddo ku dhow 10 sano soo socday oo dunidu inaga caawinaysay in aynu samayno horumar dhanka dib u dhiska dhaqaalaha ah horumar dhanka maxaan ku rahdaa hay'adaha dawladda iyo reformskooda iyo dib u dhiskooda dib hor loogu qaadayay sidoo kalena la rabay in laynagaga cafiyo dayn aan ka yarayn 5.2 bilyan oo dollar dayntaas oo runtii aan ku hanweynahay la filayo muddo ka yar 2 usbuuc gudaheed in laynaga cafiyo marka ay dhamaatay laynaga cafiyo waxaa runtii inoo furmaya fursado waaweyn oo dib ugu ballaarinayno ugu xoojinayno macaamilaadka hay'adaha maaliyadeed ee dawliga ah ama caalamiga ah waxa aan rajaynaynaa in ay taasi keento fursad maalgashi oo dunida ah waxaan rajaynaynaa in koboc dhaqaale uu yimaado oo fursadaha dhaqaale ee furmaya uu dhaqaalaha kobociisu kor u kaco waxaa arkaysaan hadda sida riboodka lagu sheegay in 2024 koboca dhaqaaluhu uu kordhi doono waxoogaa kordhi doono inkastoo weli loo baahan yahay inaynu tallaabooyin dheeraada qaadno oo kor ugu qaadayno dakhliga iyo xoojinta hanaanka maaraynta maaliyadeed ee dalka intaba laakiin fursado waaweyn baan filaynaa inuu furo in dalka uu u soo jiido maxaan ku rahdaa hay'adaha maalgashiga ay inala macaamilaan in meelaha aynu u baahannahay kaabayaasha dhaqaalaha loo heli kara maalgelin iyo dhaqaale marka fursado waaweyn baa ayaa runtii la socda iyo in loo arko dunidu in Soomaaliya ay noqotay qaangaadh oo cagaheeda ku istaagtay oo sidii dawlad taama dunida wala macaamil karta marka fursadaha waaweyn baa ku jira aad baan u mahadsantahay
waad mahadsantahay wasiir su'aasha labaad waxa weeyaan kobaca dhaqaalaha Soomaaliya maalin walba waa kobcaa Soomaaliya ma qorsheynaysaa dib u soo dabiiciga lacagta shilinka Soomaaliga ah
waa su'aal muhiim ah waxa qorshayaasha ugu waaweyn ee dawladda ay ka mid tahay in dib loo soo celiyo shilin Soomaaligi tallaabooyin dhowr ah la qaaday oo la rabo in lagu reform gareeyo maxaan ku rahdaa dib u daabicista lacagta meel fiican bay maraysaa qorshayaashaasi dawladduna waxay u tahay mudnaanta koowaad bay u tahay in la helo shilin Soomaali si kor loogu qaado in dadka loo yaqaano maxaa la dhahdaa financial inclusion uu kor u kaco ama in dadka danyarta ah ay fursad u heli karaan inay heli karaan lacag la hubo oo dawladoodu daabacday oo aan tayadeedu fiican tahay oo aan fake ahayn ama forgery ahayn ay wax ku gadan karaan wax ku sarrifan karaan sidoo kale waxa ogtihiin lacagtu waxay ka mid tahay astaamaha qaranka oo qarannimadeena ku suntan tahay marka sida anagoo og baa waxaan runtii dadaal weyn la geliyay in la soo celiyo dadaallada socda insha Allah waxaan rajaynaynaa in muddo dhow ay qorshaha lagu guuleysto
waad mahadsantahay wasiir su'aashaas waxaa weydiiyey Anwar Maxamed Shariif su'aal kale waxaa soo dhiibay Dalmar Abdulqaadir Daacad wuxuu weydiinayaa dhibaatada ugu weyn Soomaaliya marka aad joogto nolosha dhalinyarada iyo maareynta noloshooda iyaga dalka 75% ee ka ah haddana shaqo la'aantu xad ma ahan maxaa dawladda iyo Bangiga Adduunka ugu qorsheysan horumarinta qabayaasha dhaqaalaha si loo soo kabo dhalinta wajahayso shaqo la'aanta
waa su'aal muhiim ah runtii shaqo la'aantu waxay ka mid tahay caqabadaha waaweyn ee ka jira dalka dawladduna runtii ay ka shaqaynaysaa in wax laga qabto waa run in dhalinyaradu ay tahay majority-ga dadka Soomaaliyeed wasaad sheegtay waxa lagu qiyaasaa dadka ka yar 70% inay yihiin runtii xooggaas Soomaaliyeed in laga faa'iideysto oo iyagana runtii fursado loo abuuro shaqo waxay u tahay dawladda priority ama mudnaan weyn bay u tahay waxaa jira siyaasado iyo qorshayaal dawladdu ka leedahay oo la rabo in arrimaha wax lagaga qabto waxyaalaha waxaa ka mid ah in kor loo qaado runtii muddo laga shaqaynayay in kor loo qaado xirfadaha dhalinyarada si ay u helaan xirfado ay kula falgeli karaan suuqa oo ay shaqooyin ku abuuran karaan waxa kaloo muhiim ah oo ka shaqeynaynaa runtii dawladuna ay tallaabooyin badan ka qaaday sidii dhalinyaradu ay fursad ugu heli lahaayeen access to finance inay heli karaan maalgelinta ay u baahan yihiin haddii ay fikrado iyo hindisayaal la yimaadaan oo hal-abuurkooda loo maalgelin karo qorshayaal dawladeed baa jira wasaarada kala duwan ka shaqeynayaan wasaaradda shaqada iyo arrimaha bulshada wasaaradda maaliyadda wasaaradaha kala duwan wasaaradda dhalinyarada siyaasadda dhalinyarada ayay iyana samaysay oo ogtihiin marka dadaaladaas oo la isku xidhxidhay ayaa waxaan rajaynaynaa runtii iyo guud ahaan dee dhismaha kaabayaasha dhaqaalaha marka xoogga la saaro in arrimaha laga shaqeeyo waxa ka dhalanaya fursado shaqo waxyaalahaasna waxaan filaynaa runtii inay wax ka qaban doonaan waana runtii arrin u baahan in la xoojiyo si caqabadaas wax weyn looga qabto dawladdana way ka go'antay aad baa mahadsantahay
mahadsanid wasiir waxaan rabi lahaa inaad nooga majiibtid su'aalo oo maxaa la dhahaa wasiir jaamac uu maxaa la dhahaa nooga sheegi lahaa laakiin adiga hadda joogtaa marka walaashay hani xasan xaashi waxay weydiisay Soomaaliya mar waliba waxaan maqalnaa kobac dhaqaale waxaana fatahaad badan ay ka dhacaan dalka oo ay geystaan webiyada Shabeelle iyo Jubba haddaba Soomaaliya ma u qorshaysan tahay in qodis lagu sameeyo si loo yareeyo fatahaadda ay sameeyaan
waa su'aal muhiim ah runtii dawladdu iyada oo kaashanaysa Bangiga Adduunka runtii shaqooyin badan bay ka qabatay sidii loo xakameyn lahaa fatahaadaha webiyada gaar ahaan webiga Shabeelle waxaa jira meelo fara badan oo hore markasta oo fatahaada dhacaan webigu uga fatihi jiray oo iyada oo maalgelin laga helay Bangiga Adduunka runtii wax laga qabtay oo haddana la xaqiijiyay intii fatahaadahan ay dhaceen runtii inaanay ku jirin meelaha fatahaaduhu ka dhaceen oo meelaha laga badbaaday ay ka mid tahay laakiin taa macnaheedu ma aha in de baahidii iyo wixii loo baahnaa in la wada qabtay weli waxaa jira meelo fara badan iyo qabiyooyin aad u fara badan oo weli ay tahay in laga shaqeeyo waana ta keenaysa in webigu mar kasta oo uu daadad iyo roobab dheeraad yimaadaan uu fataho marka wax badan baa la qabtay welina wax badan baa qabyo ah runtiina de fatahaaduhu waxay ka mid yihiin mushkiladaha ama aafooyinka ka dhashay isbadalka cimilada adduunka oo wax inagu cusub ah oo isa soo tarayana runtii mararka qaarna abaar baynu u dhimanaynaa iyo biyo la'aan sanadka ku xigana ama waxa laga yaabaa bilaha ku xigana inaynu fatahaado iyo biyo baxdo qofba siduu u yaqaano in dadka ay runtii dhaawac u geysato ta hadda aynu arkaynaa waa taas marka biyo ka badan biyihii aynu naqaanay ayaa imanaya kuwaasaa keenaya in webiyadu ay maxaan ku idhahdaa qararka jabsadaan laakiin waxa xaqiiqo ah in shaqooyinkii la qabtay ee webiyada laga qabtay meelihii laga qabtay runtii waxtar weyni uu ka soo kordhay oo ay yihiin meelo runtii laga hortagay waxyaalo fara badan oo biyuhu keeni lahaayeen laakiin meelo fara badan iyo dhibaatooyin fara badan oo biyuhu hadda geysteen baa jira birishiyo iyo buundooyin ay gooyeen meelo hore cusub oo aan hore fatahaada uga dhici jirin oo ay uga dhaceen waxaana keenaya levelka biyaha oo aad u sarreeya laakiin dawladdu iyadoo kaashanaysa Bangiga Adduunka runtii shaqooyin waaweyn bay arrimaha ka qabatay waana soo bandhigi doonaa insha Allah dhawaan haddii Alla yidhaahdo
mahadsanid wasiir su'aasha u dambayso waxay ka timaadeen Nimco Cabdullaahi Cali waxay weydiinaysaa roobka da'aya waxay saameyn ku yeesheen geedo badan kuwaasi oo beernaa ku dhowaad 40 ilaa 50 sano haddaba maadaama kobac dhaqaale u jiro dawladda Soomaaliya maxaa kaga qorshaysan takuleenta beeraleyda
waa su'aal muhiim ah waan uga mahadcelinayaa muwaadinada beeruhu waxay ka mid yihiin laf-dhabarta dhaqaalaha dalka Soomaaliya. Runtiina waa meelaha ugu nugul ee marka ama abaari dhacdo ama fatahaada dhacaan labaduba ay saameeyaan. abaarihii isdaba joogga ahaa ee 4 sano ee u dambeeyay dhacay saameyn weyn bay ku yeesheen wax soo saarka beeraha. hadda oo daadad iyo fatahaada jiraan runtii saameyn weyn bay ku yeesheen beero badan oo ay qaadeen iyo dhulal beeraad badan oo ay runtii daadadkani ay saameyn weyn ku yeesheen baa jira. annagoo og muhiimadda uu leeyahay horumarinta beeruhu runtii dadaallo waaweyn ayaa ka socda. waxaa jira barnaamijyo ay nagala shaqeynayo Bangiga Adduunku oo loogu talagalay in kor loogu qaado maxaan ku idhaahdaa dhanka amniga cuntada ama food security-ga. wasaaradda beeruhu iyo wasaaradda xanaanada xooluhu ay hormuud ka yihiin mashruuc weyn baa jira oo 50 milyan ay ku baxayso oo loogu talagalay in lagu horumariyo wax soo saarka beeraha si kor loogu qaado amniga cuntada. kaas waa mid ka mid ah. waxaa kaloo jira dadaallo kale oo fara badan oo maxaan ku xidhaahdaa deeq-bixiyayaasha kale iyo dadka kale ayna taageera ay nagala shaqeynayaan sida hay'adda FOA iyo kuwa la midka ah. marka dadaallo waaweyn baa socda oo hawlaha ku saabsan mashaariicdaasina waxaan rajaynaynaa in marka la dhammaystiro natiijadii loogu talagalay ay runtii gaadhaan wax soo saarka beerahana kor u qaadaan xirfadaha wax soo saarka beeraha kor u qaadaan maamulka iyo governance-ka arrimaha cuntada iyo beerahana ay runtii wax ka bedelaan. Mahadsantiin.
aad iyo aad baad u mahadsantahay Wasiir Bixi. As we come to the end of our launch, we would like to request whoever is online and is watching this, we would like to do a quick poll on the topics that we have done today, which is the economic update as well as the water. Just 4 questions. So we would like to request that everybody who has a phone or a laptop, please put on your laptop polllev.com/SEU8. pollev.com/SEU8. We'll give you a minute to that, and then we can start the questions. Thank you. Join the web up there. It's written pollev.com/SEU8. It's on the screen. So question one. How can Somalia mobilize more domestic revenues? Introduce new taxes. Number 2, make compliance with tax legislation easier. Harmonize tax and customs regimes across the country. Strengthen enforcement of tax legislation. Other. Please take your call now. Pick one. Yeah, you can only pick one. It's a test. Start survey. So the result is 100%. Harmonized tax and customs regimes across the country.
I said make compliance.
Question number 2. There's also investing in, how can Somalia promote sustained and inclusive economic growth? Investing in people, strengthening institutions, deepening intergovernmental relations, integrating into world economy, other. we can see that human capital is important for a lot of people. And yes, people are the ones who will make you succeed. We go to question number 3. What are the biggest challenges to water management in Somalia? Climate change, lack of investment, insufficient regulation, population growth, other. It looks like a majority think climate change is a problem, but and lack of investment. So 50-50. I guess we have to invest a bit more. Other, I wish we knew what those are, but for now we can't see. The last question. How can Somalia meet its water needs? Investing in water preservation and infrastructure, improving management of water, transition to climate smart agriculture, use more wisely water for personal needs. I guess it's almost 50-50 as well between improving management, which is higher, and investing in water preservation infrastructure. Thank you very much for participating. We would now like to welcome Abba Prasad, our Practice Manager, Macroeconomics, Trade and Investment of the World Bank, to give her closing remarks. And then Minister Bihi, you can also say something to close off. Abba, welcome.
Thank you very much. I hope you can hear me.
Yes.
Thank you. Honorable ministers, government officials, participants, colleagues and friends, Salaam Alaikum. It's indeed a great honor for me to be giving these closing remarks today. Somalia, as we know and has been well reiterated today also, has continued to make great strides in advancing reforms to strengthen key economic institutions and promote macroeconomic stability and recovery. And this is very important, especially amid the challenges it continues to grapple with. So in collaboration with the government, including many of the officials who are in attendance today, we continue to offer our support in the much needed reforms and to build resilience, not only in terms of financing, but also with in-depth analysis of the overall economy, as well as key topical sectors in advancing Somalia's growth agenda. The Somalia Economic Update Series is one of the analytical reports that continues to shape policy discussions, strategies, and engagements. We look forward to continued collaboration in future editions to ministers. In addition to preparing the Somalia Economic Update, our economists working on Somalia have been working closely with the government in achieving 2 key milestones. The first being the HIPIC completion point, which is expected by the end of 2023, and the second, the trade policy and integration agenda. We will be happy to continue to support the government of Somalia in advancing the post-HIPIC economic agenda, which I think is really important. And I want to congratulate the government of Somalia for achieving another important milestone this year, which was also mentioned earlier, the joining of the East African community. We will continue to support the way forward to making trade integration work for Somalia and its citizens. Let me take the opportunity to thank Honorable Minister of Finance and the Honorable Minister of Energy and Water Resources for their important contributions. Thanks also to all other participants who joined the presentation, expressed their views, and added to the lively discussion and to the survey. Wishing you success, sir, in your quest for a peaceful and prosperous state, achieving inclusive economic growth and poverty reduction. To all again, thank you. Shukran. Salam alaikum.
Thank you, Abba. Minister Bihi, would you like to say the last word?
Thank you very much. I am really pleased to participate in this important launch of the report, and I really want to express our appreciation to the bank for commissioning this important report and also presenting this today with the government. And this has been a collaborative effort. And as always, you know, the bank has not been only critical for providing the necessary financial support, but also it has been and continues to be a critical reservoir for knowledge production and for provision of expertise. So this is something that we really cherish, and we want to deepen and sustain this excellent collaboration with you. On this occasion, I would like to reflect that the theme of this year has been critical. It's been momentous, and it's been timely, given that, you know, Somalia has been fraught with cyclical climatic crisis, and management, I mean, efficient management of water resources is critical in mitigating the climate risks. So investment, as also, you know, the online survey that has been demonstrated here indicates, you know, management of water and investment in water infrastructure has been demonstrated critical, and it's will be continue to be a critical priority for the government as well. It was clearly heard and loudly heard from the participants who have been actually attending this, who have been participating in the survey. So the government remains actually stand ready to work with the bank and all other international partners to find sustainable ways of mitigating climate crisis, investing in water infrastructure, and improving water management policies and practices. So without further ado, I would like to thank the authors of the report, and I would like also to express our deepest sorrow for the passing of our great friend, John Renda. We express our thoughts to his family and friends and to all of us. And I thank you for organizing this important event. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you, Minister.
Masan tahay Faadumo, kuwaasina waxay ahaayeen wasiirka maaliyadda iyo wasiirka kheyraadka dowladda Soomaaliya iyo madaxa World Bankiga ee Soomaaliya iyo xubno kale oo ka qayb galayay dooda iyo waliba su'aalaha ku saabsan warbixinta dhaqaalaha Soomaaliya ee sanadkan. Goobjoog ayaad kala socoteen. barnaamijkan inta ayaan kusoo gabagabeynaa daawadayaal nabadgelyo.
Somalia Economic Update. In a land of resilience and opportunity, where challenges are met with determination, Somalia is making remarkable strides towards economic growth. Today we bring...
Fadma, thank you so much.